welcome to the Be the Ultimate Assistant podcast with Bonnie and Vickie. I'm Vickie Sokol-Evans.
And I'm Bonnie Low-Kramen. Welcome, everyone.
Welcome. Hi, Bon.
Hey, Vickie. Oh, so happy to be doing this again because it's just been so cool since the last time that we did the episode on internal assistant networks. We have really been seeing a trend happening all around the world. And there's been a lot of talk about what a need there is for these networks, both internal and external, which is why you and I decided that we had to do a podcast about, now setting up external ones.
Absolutely, and we'll be sure to include the link for those of you that have not listen to the podcast episode about the internal network. So be sure you get access to that. Getting lots of feedback from all over the world about it, but and Bonnie, you, with regard to external networks, you have a lot of experience because you co-founded NYCA. Do you want to explain just quickly about your background with external networks?
Well, New York Celebrity Assistants is now 20 years old, and we began with 8 people, and so as we were talking with Julie and Ike, and there are growing pains, and it's not linear. The building of these networks are so important, and the driving force behind it are usually a core group of people. They're just so important to the growth of the profession, but it happens in fits and starts. It's not certainly, no cookie cutter formulas here, but, I'm happy to say we grew very well over 20 years from 8 people to now 150, and my goodness, the organization that we're going to be talking about today, Reach in Chicago, is way bigger than that. So,
well, and yours is unique because it is targeted towards celebrity assistants. So there's a vetting process, there's an application process for members to join. Whereas in this example for today's episode, we're talking about an open EA network where EAs from all over a community can come together and network together. And my personal experience is that in Austin, we're about 1 year in developing an EA network there. We've got 225 people on our list. But we've got lots of challenges because we've got low turnout for monthly meetings, and so I'm so eager to hear what Julie and Ike have to say about how to improve attendance at meetings and support from employers and so on. And certainly there's lots of EA networks around the world that are successful. We are the ones we've seen in the United States. This is one of our favorites, and we definitely want to hear what they say about what's going on. So I'm going to be quiet and go ahead and introduce is this a good time to introduce them, Bonnie, so we can get started?
Absolutely. Yeah, let's get right to it, Vic.
So let's start with Ike. Ike Saunders has led the networking group Reach in Chicago since 2013. What began with only 6 people over a casual dinner has now grown to a mailing list of over 400 members. Ike is the executive and personal assistant to Chris Kennedy, who is the son of Senator Robert F. Kennedy and Ethel Kennedy. Ike and Chris have worked together for 7 years. Julie Kavanaugh is on the Reach leadership team, and she brings 28 years experience supporting executives in Chicago. Julie walks the talk about the importance of external networks, not only with Reach, but also as a member of the New York Celebrity Assistants, which Bonnie co-founded, we just heard, and the Association of Celebrity Personal Assistants in Los Angeles. Julie currently is the Senior Executive Administrator and Managing Assistant to Craig Bouchard, an international entrepreneur, CEO, and New York Times bestselling author. Julie spent 2 years at Hillshire Brands as the EA to the President and CEO. That's where Julie helped create an internal EA network. And prior to this, Julie served as Senior EA to the VP and GM of the Chicago Blackhawks hockey team. But Bonnie and I first met Julie at our first B2A workshop in Chicago back in 2012. We've been in love with her ever since, and Ike also joined our B2A workshop, so we're so happy that they're both B2 alumni, and we're happy that they're here to talk about external networks and the one they created back in 2013, the success that they've experienced, which we all know can help others. Welcome, Julie and Ike.
Thank you so much, Vickie, Bonnie. It's great to be with both of you, and great to have you on the phone as well, Julie.
Hi, guys. Thanks for having us.
Oh, it's so great hearing your
Hi.
voices.
We love you guys so much. This is such a treat for us. So I will go ahead and kick off. So REACH stands for Regional Executive Assistants Cocktail Hour, which we love the name, by the way. I just love the name. And actually, when we talk about it around the world, people love that name too.
Yeah, they always laugh.
Mm-hmm. And it's a Chicago-based networking group for assistants, which has grown, as we mentioned, to over 400 members, and it's completely free to join. Ike, talk to us about how it got started.
So in December of 2013, 6 or 7 of us got together for drinks and just wanted the opportunity to network with people whom we'd spoken to over the phone but never had the opportunity to put a face to the voice. And a few of the women who were also on the leadership team with Julie and me had organized that first event. And I was thrilled with the idea. I had asked if I could organize the next event, which would have been in January of 2014. And I leveraged a connection I have at a local restaurant that Chris goes to a lot and sort of talked to them a little bit about what I wanted to do, which was organize an event for a number of executive assistants in the Chicagoland area, and asked them if they could create a beverage package for us so that we could all get together for drinks one day after work for an hour and a half or 2 hours and mix and mingle. And once I had the approval from the restaurant and also from the women who had helped organize the first event, I went through my contacts and dumped all of the executive assistants I worked with on a regular basis into a distribution list and sent out an email and said, this is an opportunity for a bunch of us to get together, to chat, to meet, and to network. And so we probably had 35 people show up at the next event. And after that, we started first with quarterly events, I would say, for the first year and a half. And I leaned on a number of other individuals who had contacts at different venues and asked them to make introductions for us so that we could find different spaces to have the events. And then I organized a more thorough or more spread out distribution list, with other assistants everybody had been working with. And we've continued to expand. That's sort of kind of the long arch of how it all started. The way that I got invited, I think, is an interesting story because Julie can speak to how she and I know each other and have had the opportunity to be friends from that very first event. So, Julie, I don't know if you want to share that story.
Yes, thank you, Ike. Ike and I met through an acquaintance of ours who is an executive assistant, and I actually assisted in the hiring process for that particular executive assistant, and she introduced myself to Ike. And since then, we have become great, phenomenal partners. And when you meet executive assistant, personal assistant, and you can tell that they get it, you're unstoppable in what is achievable. And when meeting new members, the excitement on their face tells it all, and they are just so eager to be a part of the success of the organization of REACH. And it's just been a great partnership building the organization with Ike and figuring out what works and what doesn't work along with our leadership team. So it's been a great experience and, again, a great partnership.
That's awesome. You know, Julie, when we met you at BTUA in 2012, which was the year before REACH started, you were already one of the most connected assistants in Chicago and in the country, actually. And I imagine, you get asked to do a lot of things. Why REACH? I mean, I know was it only Ike, or was it, talk to us about, what really captured your imagination about, spending a lot of time building this organization?
What I think it was is back in 2012 when I transitioned from the Chicago Blackhawks to Hillshire Brands, I had that desire that I really wanted to rise above and provide the top of the field support to my executives. And that actually is when I was connected through a local recruiter for Be the Ultimate Assistant workshop. And, I attended that, and I was just really craving to that level because I knew that I had it, but I needed to, unleash that. And by attending the Be the Ultimate Assistant, my very first time, to me, it really launched my inner strength and the confidence and elevated my networking. And I really wanted to see the city of Chicago and surrounding area and, across the world know that assistants have support with people that are in the day-to-day opportunities and challenges. And by becoming part of REACH, when we first started out, I just had it. I had that feeling that it would help me grow my network, but it would also just really give me that confidence to be at the top, to help the organization that I was working for and also grow REACH.
Yeah. So can you share a story, Julie, of how the organization has helped you and Craig?
Yes. In fact, it was really just recently where I was in a situation where he was having to travel with one of his family members to the West Coast, and it was a last minute, and as we all know, your hotel resorts are usually oversold or, booked, and so I sat here and thought, how am I going to get this to work? Because he wanted to stay in this property, and all of a sudden I thought, you know what? Through our REACH organization, I had met an executive assistant that worked for a major hotel brand and was located here in Chicago. I had kept her contact information. I reached out to her, and it was solved within that day. I had him in. He was upgraded. Everything went great. And it was because I met her and she attended a REACH networking event.
Yeah. It's all about relationships, isn't it? How about you? How does REACH benefit and assistance employers and the company? What have you seen?
So I have two instances. One is one of the REACH members who was actually at the very first event in December of 2013. By the time summer 2014 had come around, she works for an executive search firm, and she had spoken and very highly promoted REACH to her executives and to some of the colleagues, but the executives at her firm had actually approached her and asked her if they could pay for, sponsor, and host a summer event for us, which was probably one of our better attended events at that point. So we had a rooftop event at a hotel in downtown Chicago that was paid for by these executives. And
how many people is well attended, Ike?
At that point, it was probably 50 or 60 people, which was more than we had seen at any point up until then.
Okay.
By, I would say, 15 or 20 people.
Okay,
and
just trying to get a feeling for that, yeah.
Sure. So when they had asked to host the event, I think a large part of that was because they see the benefit of having their employees network with a wide range of other assistants in the Chicagoland area, perhaps for business purposes in case they need to tap into sort of an executive network above the assistants, but also because the assistant who was a REACH member could articulate to them having access points to assistants across the city would allow her to do things for them more expediently or better or more efficiently. There's also a tech incubator firm in Chicago, and the assistant there, who's a member of REACH, had spoken about REACH to some of the other executives in the C-suite, and the COO had approached me directly about introducing one of their startup companies that was housed in their space. And that was, the startup company offered an office device that would make sense to market to executive assistants or administrative assistants and a host of other people. But knowing that we at REACH had that access to a network, the COO saw it as a business advantage to his startup, to the startup in his firm, to say, hey, I can get you in touch with a person who can get the word out for you. And at the same time, the startup company was getting access to us so they could get the word out. And we at REACH were able to offer something to our members that is seen as a benefit beyond just getting together once a month or once a quarter.
It's so interesting because there are so many benefits, not only for the members, but, which, by the way, it's free to join. I just still can't believe that it's free to join. And then there's also benefits to the employers, the community, and I imagine, are there recruiters or hiring managers contacting you about particular jobs? Are some of the members getting jobs because of they're part of the network, or filling jobs because of the network?
I would say one of the benefits that I and all of us like to promote with Reach is the opportunity to share jobs. When people are out of work, going through the job hunt process can be incredibly isolating, demoralizing, frustrating. It's difficult to find companies that have all the openings because it's important to know the right person these days in order to get those jobs. And what Reach has become is a platform to share those job openings because we have access to top talent across the city and in the suburbs. So when a Reach members company is hiring, they will send us the job description, provide a few specifications, and we can get that job description out there, because if people are between jobs or unfortunately are laid off, they're still eligible to be members of Reach because they're still in that career track. And part of what we need to do as a community is help support those in that career track. From the employer standpoint as well, or executive standpoint, I should say, I had a CEO of a local advertising firm contact me directly and we set up a meeting so that I could go in and talk with her, because she had gone through a number of assistants over a period of time. And part of what I was able to do and what she needed was becoming educated on how to take advantage of using an assistant and what sorts of questions can be asked and what sorts of previous work history are key to identifying in order to be sure that the person that is being brought on board is aware of the expectations, and also so that she knows what to expect of assistants in the field and in the industry and what the compensation should be. So Reach at that level is thankfully becoming a consultative service both for the job seeker and for the hirer, I would say.
Right. And to just highlight the point, you don't charge the employer for, sending out the job to the organization, right?
Right, absolutely not. I am a huge fan of things that are good in the world should be free. That's why I always am behind the idea of keeping Reach free as long and as often as possible. And I think that the opportunity to get somebody a job is a great thing to do. And if there's a way to do that without attaching a price, that's one better person off in the world.
I love that.
Yeah. So, Ike, have there been surprises to you about how fast the group has grown, and has it been steady? What's that looked like?
I would say that it was a bit of a sinusoidal curve at one point. We started in December of 2013 with the 6 people. January 2014 into December of 2014, I would say our membership, it grew a lot at the start of the year, because all of the people who were involved in running Reach on the leadership team, we collected all of the assistant names and added that into a distribution list, and I would say we were probably around 150 people at the end of 2014 who were receiving regular invitations. People attending the events were, since they were only quarterly as well, I would say we're closer to 30 or 40. And in 2015, we saw a hike in membership, people who were interested in membership, because we were pushing harder on doing events more than once a quarter. And so the more fun that we were having, the more opportunity that people saw in getting their own career and personal development out of Reach events, the more the word spread, and the power of the referral is undeniable when it comes to networking groups, I would say. And people could speak from the heart and speak from experience about what benefits they saw in Reach when they were reaching out to other people. In January of this year, 2016, there was an event that I went to and that Julie went to that both of you were at, where there were 40 new assistants that Julie and I had never crossed paths with in Chicago. And given who she works with and whom I work for, the fact that we hadn't seen all of these people was a bit bizarre, but great fun for us. So I had the opportunity to talk about Reach, swapped business cards, got all those people on the list, and it flooded. We had droves of people coming in. So I would say in 2015, we had probably gotten up to 250, and from 2016 now, we have over 400 people on the distribution list. And the more people who are being added at this stage in the game are more interested and involved in responding to the emails. The people at the beginning of the process who were added into the distribution might not be actively engaged with Reach, but we have grown much faster than we were prepared for by adding in people at the start of this year. And that created challenges for us that we did not foresee. The biggest one of which I would say is identifying membership guidelines, and by that I mean what qualifies as an executive assistant. We say that because smaller companies, nonprofit companies, certain industries, certain size companies, all will sometimes have different names. Some executive assistants are titled administrative assistant 4, or secretary, or coordinator, or senior assistant. And we've been grappling with the fact recently that there were people who were getting added to the list and getting referred to the group by other executive assistants who were not in the executive assistant career track. They were not in that path of being strategic business partners with their executive, and they were more in departmental administrative support, and maybe they helped a person with their calendar, but they were doing sales reports, and they weren't just at the same level. It wasn't a caliber thing. It was just a different career track. And that is just not the right match between group and individual when we don't have an identified membership guideline. So what the leadership team has been doing recently has been trying to outline title-wise, are there certain titles that are immediate additions to Reach, and are there others that are not? Are there certain job tasks that we see as critical to qualifying somebody as an executive assistant, and are there things, maybe expense reports, for example? I don't have many expense reports to do because Chris doesn't have business expenses that he has to assume personally, but that is something most executive assistants do. How does that fall in line with how we define an assistant? I would say growing and knowing now that information about qualifying what an executive assistant is would have been one of the best pieces of knowledge that we could have had at the start. And it's difficult to deal with that at a 400-plus person distribution list right now, in case we have to sort of look at where we have grown to and maybe narrowed down from what we were, what the scope of an executive assistant is. And that's what we're very much in the thick of grappling with right now.
Right.
Yeah, that's a huge challenge, because you even have people that are really doing the role, but their title doesn't say it because their employer doesn't know that they're actually an executive assistant.
Part of what I like Reach to be for the professional community is to not only raise the visibility of the executive assistant role, but to really help clarify, one, that it is a career, not simply a job, but two, what makes that position a career position, and informing people who are in executive assistant roles that don't have that title, that they need to have that title, that promotion, if you will, even if in title alone, is a way to empower people to help inform executives and hiring managers and recruiters that the executive assistant position needs to be defined as such. And that's really the easiest way to get out of the murky waters that I think so many administrative and support professionals are in, with that lack of clarity, particularly between different companies.
Well, and we had an episode, a podcast episode with Lucy Brazier, who talked about that, about the worldwide perspective of the role and the various titles that there are. So we'll include a link there below if there's any manager interested in knowing the various titles.
Yeah, I mean, well, you know, Lucy shared that there are 162 titles for this role out in the world, but I believe you really took the lead on creating a salary survey recently, and part of the questioning had to do with their titles, yes?
Yes. So what I wanted to do is show for everybody the wide range of titles that people could select from, and I think I probably had 10 selections and then an other selection, and there were still easily a couple of dozen people who selected that other selection. And they all have different roles in terms of title, and I think part of that is beneficial. For example, Julie is a managing assistant, if I'm remembering your title correctly. Is that right, Julie?
Yes, that is correct.
And I love that, because I think it really speaks to your role as a leader of Craig's life and as a person who is not simply being responsive to requests, but you really have a foot and hand in there, and you are helping him manage his life. And it's important that people understand that process is not easy, and that's not a skill set people get without incredible expertise. And I think we can take those word choices and those job descriptions that other people have and incorporate them into our own job descriptions and our annual reviews and the titles that we're getting in positions to really show that we're not, assistant might be in our title, but we're not in some subservient responsive position. We're in a proactive really management position. It just is one individual whom we're managing up to rather than a team we're managing down to.
Well, that's. I'd love to pose the question to our listeners if they have any insight or input, if they've been doing any research or projects like this where they're developing these guidelines. So wouldn't you guys be curious to know if there's anyone out there doing the same thing?
Oh, yeah. I think getting that information together would be great. And the survey that Bonnie mentions was, I mean, it was comprehensive in terms of what all do you do in your career, but also I think it was a good check-in point to see how REACH was going. And I know one of the responses is, what would you like to see more of with REACH? And a number of people had reached out previously and also had responded in the survey that they wanted to do something that was either team building or friendship-based or community-based or civic-related that was kind of outside of REACH but related to REACH members. And Julie has sort of been really good about taking a lead on some of the initiatives in community sense that allow us as a group to collaborate and get together that have nothing to do with having wine and have nothing to do with talking about work.
Well, what's one of those?
So one of the things that we have done, and I think it can be applied to any organization and any size community, either small or large, or even if it's an organization that is trying to figure out a way to start and grow the membership base and get involvement, is reaching out to their community and finding out interest of what the group would like to do, because it's a very important component that brings the team together, small or large. And one of the things that we did was Ronald McDonald House, and that is such a touching and emotional experience. And we had to do it. We're such a large organization, but we had to do a first come, first serve because you have a capacity that you're dealing with within the house. And we had to max it really at 20 people, but we had new people that we had never met before that came to the event. And what we did is we brought and provided and cooked right on Ronald McDonald House site in their kitchen dinner for all of the families that were having to stay at the home. And we served that evening close to 60 people total. But you're seeing that whole community and the appreciation that those people have. It really, I think, built a strong bond of, hey, look what this group, REACH does. Besides just networking out at events, they really care about the community. And I really think that that is something that organizations, if they're struggling on trying to find something, make that even a starting point, because that can be small. And, separate from that, something that really resonates with me is a very high-profile public CEO in the city of Chicago. I was at an event, he was at an event, and he came up to me and he said, hey, he goes, I don't know what your group does or what you're doing, but I have had an assistant for 17 years, and she has really gone from junior to senior level just by attending the REACH events and networking and meeting people. It's really helped her confidence and her skills. And to me, right there, says a lot about the organization and what it brings to that assistant and that executive.
I love that. Like, that was one of my questions I was going to ask you is, do managers know that their EAs are part of REACH? That is amazing testament to the organization. I just wonder, do your managers know? Do your executives know that you guys are doing this? Or are you guys doing it behind the scenes?
Chris knows, and part of the reason he knows, and all three of you know, one of my biggest personal values is work-life balance, and part of the life balance piece for me is committing time to doing things that I love doing, that I want to do, that I'm not getting compensated for. And reach is one of those things. I love the opportunity to be with those people. And so there are days when I will walk in. Our events typically start at 6, and I'll walk into Chris at 5, and I'll say, you've got 30 minutes. What do you need from me? Because I have a reach event. And at first, that didn't register with him with what it was, but now he not only knows what it is, but will reference it by name. Right. And will suggest that I reach out to certain people and invite them to my group. He's mentioned to other executives about them getting other people involved with the group, which Chris is a networker, and I think anybody who understands the benefit of networking would be incredibly supportive of a Reach membership. And I think assistants whose executives don't already know about that, it would be great for those assistants or new interested assistants to frame it in context of how their executive networks and the benefits their executive gets out of networking, and simply applying that. And Craig, I know Craig has probably praised Julie a number of times. He's got to know about Reach in your world, right?
Correct. Craig is very supportive of the Reach organization, and he can see the networking benefits. In fact, actually today, we were talking about it because I was telling him about the podcast that we are doing currently, and he was asking me about it, what it was consisting of, and I was telling him a little recap again about the organization on where we started, where we are currently at with the membership count, and he was just totally for it because of the whole networking and really the return on investment that can be on his side. And he has shared on a small scale the stage with me at an event where there was Q&A that Ike had moderated for us. So he's very supportive of it and talks about it as well.
Yeah, well, I have to say, when I helped start New York Celebrity Assistants, Olympia from the very start was so supportive of me being involved with it. She understood completely what the benefits would be, that not only would it benefit me, but it would benefit her, because essentially, over the years, she felt like she had 100 assistants, not only me, and that's the power of the group. It's just incredible what resources. I mean, I began to feel like, wow, there's nobody we can't get to. Nobody, right?
And it's interesting, I mean, when you mentioned that, Bonnie, thinking of the other networking groups or opportunities to be with like-minded individuals, at Be the Ultimate Assistant was where I really got my arms around Vickie's session on OneNote. And OneNote is something, Chris is not the type of person who, throwing a new technology at him, I need to make it clear how that's going to benefit him, because if he has to learn something new and it slows him down and decreases his capacity and bandwidth, that's a disadvantage. And I was very quickly and easily able to show him OneNote. It's just the example as a cloud-based software that the two of us can communicate through, and it streamlines and houses so much of our process. And I'm so forever grateful to you, Vickie, because he will use it and will specifically reference it as OneNote, and he knows what it is and where it is and how it works. And those sorts of learning experiences when you're around a group of people, like at BTUA or at Reach or at an NYCA event, are terrific.
Yeah, if they see specifically how it benefits them, that's even more of an incentive for them to push you out the door, get out, like go to the Reach event, learn more stuff. So do you ever encourage your members to be sure to tell your executive about what you're doing? Because I know a lot of times, and Bonnie speaks about this all the time, the inability for assistants to speak up and share with their executive what they're doing. Do you encourage it at all, or is it just kind of,
implicit? Implicit. I like to hope it's implicit, but I think the salary survey was it was a juggernaut of a project, but it was, I think, helpful. A number of assistants took that to their annual reviews. There was one member of Reach who had specifically asked me, after going through the survey, my title is administrative assistant, and I realize I'm an executive assistant, how I need to have a conversation with my boss, and how do I do that? And I gave the person those tools, and the conversation went really well, and that conversation was the genesis of a title change. And while I think it's good and important and critical for executives to know that their assistants are involved in this, and for them to realize there's a network that they can benefit from as well. I think the most immediate thing is to get other assistants to realize the benefit of being part of this, and I think it happens so quickly, the benefit that they then can bring back and be excited about and be re-motivated and re-energized about their career, which, I mean, for me, I feel even internally more excited coming to work, especially if I have a Reach event that night.
Well, it's my vision that this podcast episode will be heard by executives and that they will tell their or encourage their assistant to go find an external network. That's my hope for this particular episode.
And for our listeners, it's fine that we're going to provide a link for the salary survey. So if other groups, you're making this public knowledge, correct?
Yes, I think that in my everything should be free mindset, this information needs to be out there. It's the only way that we can really generate change, and important critical change to mandating that we are compensated appropriately, that executives understand what sort of stressors we face and what we look for in a job, so that everybody is creating better work environments and offering competitive compensation packages in terms of benefits and salary.
Terrific.
Hey, so Bonnie, I have bad news.
Oh, no.
We're run out of time.
That always happens.
But we have good news, because Ike and Julie, can you guys stay with us and we can record part 2?
Yes,
sure.
we can.
Awesome, awesome. Okay, good, because we like to keep these down to 30 minutes to help you guys manage your day. So, Bonnie, what are we going to cover in part 2?
Right. In part 2, we are going to be speaking directly to executive assistants about the nuts and bolts about how to create an external network. How do you get meeting space? How do you build your list? How do you get sponsors? And the benefits of sponsorship for the sponsors out there, and so much more. So don't go away.
Okay, I can't wait, because I can't wait to hear how we do this, because we need to do it in Austin. We're going to do it. So before I conclude, Ike, I have a question for you. If you're in a room full of executives, what would you say, to answer this question, why should their assistant join an external EA network?
Executives who are best in class and are the most efficient and best leaders know that their assistant is an extension of their office and of their business, and to give that person as much professional resource as possible is a direct benefit to office efficiency, expanded bandwidth, and the opportunity to get help with reservations at a restaurant that the person really wants to get into, that a member of an external network could help them get into, or understanding better software that's out there for client management systems that executive assistants might not otherwise hear about if they're not involved in these external networks, is the best way to capitalize on having all of these people in one room. Being an executive assistant can be an incredibly siloed position where the interaction with people who know how to do that career professionally is unfortunately not there, and the opportunity to get these people face-to-face and to bounce ideas off of each other and to share wisdom and experience and insight really helps an office run more smoothly and more efficiently, and any executive worth his or her salt can see the benefit to that happening all the time.
Well said. Love that.
That's great. And Julie, what about you? Do you have any closing thoughts for us on this episode?
I have a very important quote that I think resonates very well with the group and getting the message across. And it is, "The people who influence you are the people who believe in you," by Henry Drummond. To me, that says it all when you say that.
Great. Oh, I love it. I love it. Boy, you certainly walk this talk, Julie and Ike, both of you. Thank you both so much.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys. Well, this concludes today's episode. We'd love your feedback, topic ideas, and questions. Visit the podcast page at betheultimateassistant.com. Thank you once again to our guests, Ike Saunders and Julie Kavanaugh, and to you for listening. We'll see you next time. Bye, Bonnie.
Bye, Vickie. Bye,
Bye.
Julie and Ike.
Bye.
Bye.